Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. The manhwa starts with a guy live streaming, saying that this is all for real. The chat is going crazy saying it's like a movie. And the man turns his camera and points toward a giant monster. The chatters are asking if it's real, since it's not even on the news. A man drops his phone and runs over to his balcony. His face is both scared yet curious. As he looks up, we see a figure in his eye. As there is a giant ominous form clasping its hands together, as if it were praying. The man falls backwards saying if he were to explain how it got to this point, he would have to take us back to the beginning. It was 3 years ago just as he started high school. He's walking down the hallway, to his classroom, which is class 3 of the first years. As soon as he enters we see someone asleep, while the rest all turn to look at him. But quickly turn back to the front after seeing who it was. The man says the atmosphere is awkward as hell, and he wonders if he should sit in the corner. He picks a seat, and sighs saying this is overwhelming. But as overwhelmed as he felt, he bet there were a lot of mixed emotions in the classroom. Some might have been nervous about the unfamiliar environment, while others just had zero care in the world. Others would be investing in their future, some would be watching Manhwa recaps on YouTube. Others are still late, but none of them would be as confused. We see a window appear in front of the man, he rubs his eye and does a double take. But it's still there. The window welcomes him to the school, and says he needs to give the ghost's hands to get special abilities, also there's a demon king apparently. The man wonders if he's been playing too many games. An announcement comes over the intercom, saying there's a blackout on campus so the electricity is limited. Due to this, the entrance ceremony will be taking place in the courtyard. Some of the students in his class stand up saying that's a pain in the ass. But none of them seem to notice the window in front of him, and he wonders if nobody else can see it. As they all start walking down the hallway, he says that it's definitely a status window. He says that there was a study done that shows 80% of men see status windows. But of course he just made that shit up. He starts to nervously scratch the back of his neck. And says he's gone crazy on his first day of school. He makes his way to the courtyard and looks at it saying it still isn't disappearing. But he wonders what the hell it's even talking about. Mentioning mysteries, urban legends and even ghost stories. He doesn't even like those things. He sees there's an option for a second page, and stretches his hand out to the window. But someone yells at him which startles him, and tells him to line up properly. He decides that he should focus on the ceremony first, and wonders if he can get rid of the window, and just like that it disappears. The principal or headmaster gets up on the mic and starts freestyling for them, but doesn't hit his mark. He gets mid-sentence and his head starts to rapidly swell up. Until he pops like a zit, the students are speechless. Even one of the professors say nothing, as the principal's think tank juice is splattered onto the ceiling, and on the floor. The main character just sits there confused, and asks what the hell just happened to that guy. One of the teachers go up to check on him, and peers over the railing completely mortified to see that the principal is missing his head. She starts yelling for someone to call 911, but as she goes to dial it, she slowly starts to forget the number and her head along with some others begin to swell up. And they pop like zits too. The students scream and start running saying they need to get out of here. A teacher tries to calm them down, saying they need to wait, but he begins to swell up and a lot of the other students also just have their heads exploded. The main character sees all of this happening just right behind him, and starts to run saying he doesn't want to be next. He starts to think about where to go. Some of the other students make it to the front gate, but realize that it is an opening. The man sees the others aren't able to get out, and with the others behind him having their heads exploding, he thinks about going over the wall. But sees other students pulling each other down in pure panic. He says the front gate and walls are too crowded, and he won't be able to get out if he gets stuck in their mass hysteria. So he starts to think of another way out. We see a side door open up, and the security guard comes out asking what's going on. He sees everyone running for their lives, and the mob trying to climb the school wall. And he yells telling them it's too dangerous. Some nearby students run up to him asking for him to open the damn gate. He asks if they are crazy. And out of fear they turn aggressive asking him to open the gate, and start mobbing him. The main character, who still has no name, asks why he's so intent on keeping it closed, even when he can see something is wrong. But, thanks to the students getting distracted, there's more room on the wall now. With the exploders getting closer and closer, he realizes he doesn't want to win the Darwin Award and starts running. He makes his way to the wall, and leaps up grabbing onto the railing. A student grabs his leg saying not to leave him behind, and he kicks him saying get the hell away. He cuts his hand on the pointy part of the railing, and jumps over the wall. He says Fate's will is like a ghost, it shows up unannounced, disrupting daily life, and that he didn't know then that he was already infected. His vision begins to grow darker as his head inevitably pops. A window appears, saying he died, and will restart at a previous checkpoint, then starts to load him in. He wakes up screaming, inside of the classroom, and yells about his head. But looks down to see the window appearing again, welcoming him. The other students look over, wondering what flavor of mental illness he has. They start to think that he's trolling or something, and laugh, saying he is an interesting one for day one. But the man is just confused, as he is back in the classroom, with the same students as before. He wonders if he was dreaming or something, but says it felt too real to have been a dream. He starts to feel sick to his stomach thinking about it, and wonders if he really went back in time. He says that dying once and returning to the past, and just the whole situation seems so game-like. The intercom cuts on again, and repeats the announcement of the blackout, and again tells them all to return to the courtyard. He starts to clench his head, saying that this shit is definitely real, and thinks about how to change the outcome. He says the secret must lie in the status window. Thankfully it starts to narrate for us. Unfortunately bro caught astray from it, but it says that it's his first day of the next 3 years in school. For anyone else they'd be excited, but for him that isn't the case. Since he realized that this school is definitely not ordinary. And he has an ominous feeling that there will be more bizarre things to happen, but it's the first day of a long 3 years ahead of him. He sees the window mentioning a tutorial, saying to make 3 friends and start a club, and he'll be given 10 ghost story points. He says he thought it was very game-like. The difference is that the pain he felt from exploding definitely wasn't virtual. He wonders what he should do, saying their teacher forced them to the courtyard again. He wonders if it'll happen again, or if he's really just losing his mind. He starts to get too caught up in if it's real or not, and glances back at the wall he leapt over, saying since he's at the back of the crowd, he can leave hella quick if it repeats, and that he will run at the first sight of danger. The principal starts his monologue, saying he's so happy to have them attending. But just like last time, his head explodes, while his blood flows through the air. The main character quickly turns and starts running, leaving the rest stunlocked while they wait for what's next. He says he needs to get through the gate somehow, before the others crowd it. He turns and sees them right on his ass, saying they are quick. He has an idea, and yells to get the security guard's attention. He comes out of his office asking what the yelling's about. The main character points at him, and yells, telling the rest he has the key and they need it to open the main gate. The security guard freezes up as the crowd begins to rush him, asking for the key. Now that his plan has worked, it's time to get a move on while they are distracted. Instead of climbing the wall, he opts to just climb over the gate. He lands on the other side. He doesn't stick the landing and says he can't think he's safe as he died here last time. He starts to run down the street, to get as far away as he can from the school. But he falls over and loses consciousness. He wakes up inside of the hospital, and when he opens his eyes he sees dudes in hazmat suits. They dubbed it, the Noksong High School 300-person head explosion incident. The government assumed it was an infectious disease and he was one of the few survivors. His parents burst into the room worried about him, and he seemed relieved to see them. They hug one another, and he says it took 10 days for him to be able to see them. After being pestered by the media and police for a long time, he returned to a normal life. But the status window is still there. He wonders what it really means, and now he is back inside of his room at home / just staring at it, and we finally hear his mother calling his name. She tells June that tomorrow is his graduation, so to sleep early. He sighs and goes to close the window. We learn it's been 3 years since the incident, and the window still haunts him to this day. He goes to cut his light off, and says he tried to avoid it, since he made friends and joined clubs, but nothing happened. He thinks that it's truly just a hallucination. Just as the clock strikes midnight, the window says graduation day has arrived, and that the Demon King has been resurrected. He hears an emergency alert on his phone, which wakes up him. We see people all over the city looking up into the sky, and wonder what's going on. Now the start of the manhwa makes more sense, as the giant monster has appeared, which of course, now we know is the Demon King. June says it's definitely near the school which was closed off, and he falls to the floor again, saying that the status window is real. At that moment he felt a chilling gaze, and says it felt like he was making eye contact with it. His body starts to shut down, as he starts to lose his sense of being and is left with nothing but pure psychosis, as he died in a way he couldn't comprehend. He obtains a bad ending due to turning a blind eye. The window says starting regression, and reloads his previous save. He jolts awake in his school uniform and looks down again to see the same familiar window, along with the intercom going off. While the students complain like usual, we see the one worrying about his future looking around the room, then returns to being an NPC. June starts to shake in fear, saying it started again. He thought he got over it, and that he became numb to the topic. But he still remembers it like it was yesterday. The door opens with his teacher asking why they aren't going outside. He says that she rushed them out last time too. She tells them to stand up, and to wake up the girl in the back of the room. One of the girls looks at her and gets too nervous, and the glasses boy also seems too afraid. June wonders why they aren't waking her up when the teacher asks them to. June turns around to see her, and sighs, saying okay. Then says that the other two are the herbivore types, and that the sleeping girl is closer to a carnivore. At least based on how they are dressed. He says they must be afraid, but he stands up saying he just got back from living 3 years, so to him being older mentally it feels like a ridiculous concern. But he decides to showcase what being mature is like, so reaches out to the girl and straight stutters for 5 minutes trying to form a sentence. The herbivores realize they sent one of their own kind to be slaughtered. The girl doesn't even acknowledge him, and June says he tried to pretend like he wasn't a girlfriendless loser, but he can't even talk to women. She starts to raise her head, and looks up glaring at June, who is intimidated by women. She scoots her chair back and gets up and walks out. June says he thought she was gonna hit him. Their homeroom teacher looks through the windows as they pass down the hallway, saying that the other classes have already gone outside. June starts to wonder about what to do. He says he remembers it from 3 years ago, and if it keeps going like this it'll be the same as always. So he needs to change something. He calls out to his teacher, and says it might be tough for him to stand in the courtyard since he's anemic. She says it doesn't look like he is anemic since he isn't that thin. He tells her that it's not related to weight. She thinks about it, and he can see that she doesn't seem uncertain. He tries to convince her by saying that if he collapses his parents would make a big deal about it. The teacher thinks about how that'd be an issue. She tells him that she'll take him to the infirmary. They head over to it, and after she leaves he peers his head down the hallway, and says she's finally gone. He closes the door saying he's already died twice, and that he doesn't want there to be a third. He says if things were structured like a game there'd be a clue in his classroom for sure, and that it wouldn't be too strange. He opens the door, and is surprised to see the herbivores from earlier. He asks what they are doing here. The girl awkwardly tries to explain it, and she says that when the teacher left the red jacket girl walked back to the room, so they followed her. June tells them they are more daring than he thought. The glasses kid clears his throat, and says that he's no different, then asks how his anemia is. June quickly tells him that it was a lie, and that aside they seem to be accomplices now. He says they should gather and talk about something. June thinks how it's better this way, and it'd be pointless to figure it out on his own, but if he talks he can find something out. He introduces himself to them as Lee June. We learn Glasses is named on Gyeongwon. The other herbivore is named Yoon Suna. June says bro's name is legit Glasses in Korean. We'll call him Jeon. He says they weren't leaving the class either, and asks why. Yuna says that she's smooth-brained. The window says that his understanding of Suna has increased by 5. June says it's yet another game system, and Jeon says he didn't leave after remembering a ghost story about the school announcement. June asks what it is. Jeon says it's a blackout, which is a pretty famous ghost story. June says the term ghost story is brought up in the window too. June asks him to tell more about the ghost story. Jeon says that one day there was a blackout at school during the evening class. The sudden darkness startled the student, but there was a broadcast that followed, which told them to go to the courtyard. While others walked out, the top student in the class stayed behind. Seeing this, the second-ranked students ask the top student why she wasn't leaving, and asks if she has to study even now to become a top student. The top student slowly answered, asking if they hadn't noticed, asking how they can broadcast during a blackout. June and Suna are confused, and ask if that's all there was to it. Jeon asks if he's heard it before. June says it sounds semi-familiar, asking if there's more to it. Jeon says there's a few variations, but that's how ghost stories actually are. For example, there's a story that they looked out to see a blood-filled courtyard. June quickly asks him if they survived, and Jeon replies saying it's safe to assume that, but says it's not a real story, so why is he so invested into it? June says that's true, but he stayed behind because he took the story seriously, right? Jeon says it did bother him a bit, and that they wouldn't be able to use the intercom during a blackout, so he thought he'd just sit in the classroom again. Then says maybe they were still able to do the broadcast due to the backup system. June says he seems excited, and he's the type of guy to show how smart he is. His understanding of him increases by 20. He opens the status window up again, and looks at it. And double checks that it mentions ghost stories, and he says that he needs to figure out the relation. Sana chimes in, saying that she thought it was an interesting story. He's surprised she spoke up, and he says she mentioned she was a bit slow, but didn't expect it to be so extreme. And then he realizes that it must have looked like he was staring at her. He apologizes, and then the principal starts to talk. A cold chill runs down June's spine, as the principal slowly gets to the point where his head explodes. June closes his eyes in anticipation, but the principal continues the speech like normal. June is caught off guard. June realizes that he's survived, and a window appears saying that he's come across the broadcast ghost story, and earned 5 GS points. June stretches over the desk and sighs loudly purely out of relief. Jian jumps a bit, and asks what's wrong and if something happened to him. June just laughs at it, and says he wouldn't believe him even if he told him. For some reason it clears the tutorial, or maybe I'm misunderstanding the windows. But he earns 10 GS, and unlocks a status window. The entrance ceremony is finally coming to an end, and he looks at his status window to show his disposition and his quirk, along with an inventory slot I think. June is surprised by all of the info. And says it's really feeling like a game with stats and stuff. He taps on his disposition to read more. It tells us a whole lot of info that I ain't reading, feel free to if you want to. But he summarizes it, saying that he's inconsistent and whimsical depending on the situation. He realizes he's a complete wuss. It says he has an iffy personality, and the only positive thing about him is his ability to think his way out of situations. He wonders why he caught a stray, and says that it's honestly an annoyingly understandable explanation. He's been the type of person to get more than halfway through things, but never see it through to the end. And he wonders if it's from the disposition. He says it's like the window knew more about him than he did himself. And he wonders if he can use it on others too. He looks at Jian and opens his status window. And it opens up his window, but has some of it as question marks. He's a bit of a wiki warrior. June says he's just as he thought he was. He wonders about Sana, and opens her thing, but sees that it's all question marked, and that she acts slow. He sees that she is only 16 and decides to try asking her about it next time. He received way less info on her, and says it must be due to the understanding level being too low. He wonders about the delinquent girl, and opens it. We learn her name is Lee Jinhee, and she also has no information. He has an understanding of 0. He says he didn't expect much to be here, but it's quite odd how it knew info about him he didn't even know, and that it knows everyone's names and ages. When he's never asked for some of it, and that the status window can see way beyond his perception. He closes his eyes, and starts to recap how for some reason unknown ghost stories are happening in real life. There's a game-like system only he can see, and just like in a game if he dies he can respawn. He's not sure what the purpose is for the GS points either. It said he cleared the quest to make 3 friends as well. The 2 of them should be Jian and Sana, but maybe Jinhee counted too. He wonders why she's counted, saying that is absurd. And he thinks about how when a delinquent says the word friend it's usually always dangerous, so he should look out for it. We are then introduced to his teacher Damim, who tells them all to read through the handouts carefully. He wonders why his teacher's name is just teacher in Korean. He glances at the paper and says most of it is just common sense. But his head hurts so he really doesn't want to read anything. But some of the students who are reading it are a bit concerned about what it says. An announcement comes over from the broadcast. They received that they were printed incorrectly. And they'll be coming back to retrieve the handouts. His teacher out of breath comes back into the room, saying there's a mistake in the handouts. He tells them all that the students in the back should collect them all and hand them to him. June looks back at them wondering if there's something odd about them. Someone quickly takes it back before he can read it. June says that was hella fast, but says it's whatever since he can just ask Jian or Sana about it. Jian tells him that he didn't bother reading it. June is speechless about this. But Sana chirps up saying that she actually read the handouts. June asks her what the mistake was. She says that it was worded correctly, it just had something odd. June and Jian ask what it is. Sana said she couldn't read it all, but between the normal policies it mentioned being careful of a certain woman. And it said that she is the laughing woman, and to avoid her. June wonders what it means, and she says that it detailed how to be careful of her. But Sana doesn't remember the details. June says that's weird, and thinks it's a prank. He's a bit slow too. Jian says that it used a popular ghost story. June at this point recognizes that this isn't a coincidence. So he asks Jian what the story is. Jian says it's going viral online, and that it'd be faster to just show him. Jian says he'll make a group chat since they exchanged numbers earlier, and to look at the photo he is sending. June's phone vibrates, and he sends him some contract that explains how the apartment was built exclusively for its employees. It mentions how if anyone in your family is religious you will be rejected. When you visit the department in charge to submit documents, make sure to turn in anything that can tell time. And after moving in, application withdrawals will not be accepted for hallucinations, hearing voices or other health reasons. For security reasons, the unit at the end of each hallway is always empty, and if the lights are on or you hear a sound, to ignore it. The apartment doesn't have a fourth floor for religious reasons either. So if it stops, to just unalive yourself before you're discovered. Entering the stairwell at night is prohibited if you end up absolutely needing to use the stairs. Make sure you crawl. Jian asks him if he understands now. June says besides the note, why do they need to contact a pharmaceutical department? Asking if it's about human experiments. Jian says that's one interpretation at least. June asks him what the right answer is, and Jian asks what he means. June says that it's an odd document, so surely it has some kind of a conclusion, right? He looks down at Sunna and thinks for a moment. Then tells June that the thing about ghost stories is that they don't have endings or conclusions. He says the document was posted by someone for Clover, it's not like there's a real conclusion or anything. June says that means they just put a picture up, and Jian says yes. I really don't get what this conversation is about, bro is cooked. June apologizes, and realizes that Jian doesn't want to be misunderstood as not knowing something. Jian says to summarize, what's called a manual ghost story is just sneaking weird warnings into otherwise normal documents. June starts to think about the laughing woman. And says he can feel this is gonna be another pain in the ass. Outside of the third-year hallways, we hear a woman laughing as she walks by the rooms. She has a box cutter in hand, while smiling hella creepy like. I can fix her. Damim tells them that they'll call it here today, and to make sure they all have their textbooks with them. And to be sure to bring the right ones according to the schedule. As everyone goes to head home, June hears the students talking about the books, and starts to laugh. Saying from his 3 years of high school experience already, he can tell them. They won't even open their textbooks when they get home. Sunna then calls out to him, and tries to say something, but is nervous. He realizes what she's trying to say, and asks if she wants to walk together. She cheerfully says yes, and he asks if Jian has already left. She points over saying he's still here. He's talking to the guy who did nothing but play games. June thinks about something, then calls them the fat and skinny duo. Ornstein and Smo, if you know you know. The school bell officially rings to end the day, and we see June and Sunna walking together. He asks her if she goes left from the school gates. She tells him yes. He says he has to go right, so it's a shame they'll have to part. As they keep walking, he thinks about the understanding in the status window. While it doesn't show him levels or stats, it told him to just raise his understanding. He says since it's only 5 out of 100, maybe he can guess to try and raise it. He starts talking about how the apartment she lives in is over 30 years old, and it's usually full of elderly people. He says that gives him some clues. He starts saying she's broke in like 10 different ways. But nothing pops up about the understanding. He says it doesn't seem to work like this, and thinks his vocabulary is the problem. So again he calls her broke 10 different ways. She's catching stray after stray. He says he guesses it doesn't work like this after all. And then thinks it'll need to be more of a deeper deduction. He says that she acts slow and doesn't talk much. It's possible she was an introvert from the start, but it wouldn't be surprising if it was something environmental that caused it. He wonders if it's from her home environment. Maybe growing up poor made it hard to interact with others and slowly ate away at her self-esteem, and that's how she became timid now. His understanding of her jumps up by 30 points, and he is surprised that it actually worked. She calls out to him, as they've already reached the gate. The security guard scolds a girl for her shoes, and June recalls him being mobbed previously. They both say bye to one another, and as she goes he tells her to hold on, and he starts to think about the words to say. Then just apologizes to her. Since it's been 3 years for him since he's walked home like this, it's a bit nostalgic to him. He couldn't help but feel excited about it all, but unfortunately he was sleeping on one important fact. He goes to ring the door, but quickly realizes he has no clue which apartment they lived in. A lady starts to come out, and he says this is great timing. He quickly runs in the door before it closes, and makes his way back home. He opens the door, and then remembers his mother is a cashier. Even though he spent a lot of time with them over his 3 years, he still misses them greatly right now. There's no way they made it through the Demon King unharmed. He spots something on the table. It's some money and his mother saying to go buy something to eat. He looks happy while reading it, but asks where he can get chicken for that cheap here. He eats something out of the fridge, and says being home is an unbeatable feeling. He looks over and says that nothing happened, but he wasn't able to let his guard down at school. But at least here he can finally relax. He thinks of the Demon King, asking how he's meant to fight that. He lays down on the couch, saying it's a whole new arc for school, and even though he's done 3 years already, it feels like a whole new start. He lets out a sigh, and says it means he'll have to take the national exam again, and says damn. Later in the day he hears his door buzzing, and he quickly gets up out of bed, and runs out of his room to see his parents. They are surprised he's so excited, and ask what's gotten into him, asking if he saw a ghost or something. He quickly says that's not it, and his mother asks what he wants to get for dinner. He tells her whatever she wants, and she says he's definitely being odd. He looks back at his system window, and it says he's on his second attempt, and has 13 GS points, and a casualty rate of 2%. There's also some other stuff, but he will explain when it's important. He wonders why it says second attempt, since the first one was when his head popped, and the second was the Demon King. So this would be his third. But he decides to just skip the stuff he doesn't know. He still doesn't know what the GS points are for, or the casualty rate. The club thing is also still locked. He clicks on statistics and we see that it has all of the time he's spent doing things, along with his number of deaths. He asks if this was made by some kind of stalker, then he opens his settings tab, which is just like any other settings in a game. He is curious, and says he needs to do some experimenting. He says it's time to recap, he's doing it for us. He says from the settings the graphics adjust the brightness, contrast and gamma, so he can see better in the dark. It feels like a filter was put on his vision. The audio options made it seem like a pair of really good earplugs. But the control options were clunky, and it got to the point where when he moved his foot, his hand would move instead. He barely managed to reset it. His teacher Damim says that they'll pick their seats today, so to come up front and to draw lots. June draws 26, and walks over to it. He saw the girl beside him and his heart skipped a beat. She was way too pretty for him to even try talking to, never mind he wasn't that lucky. He's with Smo. He tells him that it's nice to meet him. Smo smiles and replies back. June recognizes him as Jian was hanging out with him. His name is Odu-kun, and June's understanding went up by 15. He asks about the handout from the other day. Even though Suna told him, he wants to get as much info as possible. He pushes up his glasses and snorts, asking if he means the laughing woman one. June wonders why he's such a weirdo, and gives him a look of disappointment. He tells him if he sees the laughing woman, not to pretend that he knows her. Then he says no good in Japanese. June regrets talking to him, saying he should go speak to Suna instead. He walks over at her, saying he saw she was late today. She says yeah, her grandma woke her up late. He asks if she's talked to her deskmate yet, and she says no. June decides to greet her, and introduces himself to her. She looks up at him, and he says that she's pretty, and really wishes he didn't have Smo as his deskmate. She introduces herself as in Haeun. June says that he's sorry for asking out of the blue, but asks if she recalls the handout, and how there was an odd warning. She says that it was certainly weird. If you spot a woman smiling strangely on campus to turn a blind eye until she passes by. She chuckles saying that's creepy, trying to see if he agrees. But he's just surprised she remembered it in such detail. He says that this ghost will probably happen, and wonders if he should go look for her. But the warning said not to pretend that he knows her, and shouldn't intentionally look for her. Suna's stomach rumbles loudly. Haeun looks at her, but so does June. She quickly starts to feel embarrassed. June says that he guesses she hasn't had breakfast yet. He tells her they'll go to the cafeteria during break. At the school convenience store, we see a box cutter. Inside the store we see there's a ton of people. June asks if they can even buy anything before the break ends. She says that she isn't sure. He tells her it's better to try than to not. He grabs something, asking what she'll be getting. She looks nervous, but before she can answer they turn around to see some students arguing about pushing people in. The guy says it isn't him, and turns around pissed, but when he looks up he sees a tall woman, who won't stop laughing. They wonder what her deal is, and say maybe she's crazy. She suddenly shouts no very loudly, and then slashes across his face very quickly, Bro got ahead of himself as his thoughts are sent across the room. The woman is still laughing even after murdering him. June looks over to see it, and both he and June's hearts sink. She covers her mouth out of pure shock. The other students all start to panic, and start running away from this. The woman continues to laugh, and starts to extend her box cutter. Then keeps her killing spree up, slicing them up very quickly, sending their heads flying across the store. June tells Sunna that it's definitely the girl. The girl from the handouts. I'm not sure if he got it from her laughing, or her slaughtering people. She starts decapitating students left and right. June grabs onto Sunna's hand and starts to run away with her. He tells her they need to get to the window behind the counter. He starts to recall what the printout said, and asks how the hell he is meant to ignore her, when she's killing indiscriminately. He helps Sunna across first, but she freezes up after seeing something, then points behind him yelling. He turns to see the woman is close, and she gets right into his face. Then goes straight for his eye, killing him. It says he'll restart from a previous checkpoint, and loads. He spawns back inside of the classroom, and says he better not be back to the entrance ceremony day. But looks up seeing the lights are on, and then pulls out his phone to check his YouTube notifications. He sees that it's just back to this morning. He wonders what made the checkpoint change, and recalls his death, and feels a phantom pain in his eye. He says that this is definitely no dream, and is reality. He says he needs to face the truth. He recalls what Smo said about ignoring her, and how Haeun told him to act casual by ignoring her. He lets out a long sigh, and asks how the hell he's meant to do that when she's killing everyone. Damim starts to go over their seating plans again, telling them to draw lots. He gets 26 yet again, and wonders if it's a coincidence. He looks over to see Smo, who is smiling at his phone. He still feels disgusted. He says he did his best to make a lot of variables during the entrance ceremony. For now he should just collect info. He sits down and starts talking to him, and asks about the handout again. He makes his way back to the dialogue with Haeun, saying it's creepy, and how he's silent, and then waits for Sunna's stomach to growl again. Before he asked her to go to the cafeteria, but there's not much to do there. So he plans to just not go and watch from afar. He says he can see the line well from here, and if he figures out from where she appears it'll be good. He spots her hand on the wall, and she slowly starts to climb over it while laughing. He's surprised she showed up so openly. Jian then asks him what he's doing here. We can see he just came out of the bathroom. He asks what he's looking at, and looks over at it. He tries to tell him to wait, but says that Jian knows more about the stories than he does. So surely asking him would be the right move. He asks Jian if he sees the woman. He adjusts his glasses, and starts describing her appearance. June says she's the smiling lady from the handouts, and asks how the character from the manual ghost story survived. Jian is confused, asking what he's talking about. June says that he mentioned it yesterday about the story, asking what the characters do. Jian says that there isn't a main character, asking if he doesn't understand it even though it's a simple concept. June gets pissed, and says he understands, but how did they live? He says that since it's a manual, shouldn't they just follow it? And that it tells him how to act and what not. He says that it's somewhat expected, and says it's the only way. Jian smacks his hand away saying that he's been acting odd since yesterday, asking if he's taking the handout seriously. He asks if it's because of the woman, saying she's just a crazy woman. Then they hear a visceral scream as they turn over to see the woman screaming at them. She's staring directly at Jian, and her box cutter flies in through the window, stabbing him in the head. June is surprised, as Jian just got killed so quickly. His body falls limp to the floor, and June starts to feel uneasy as his stomach twists into knots. The other students also see this, and start to scream loudly. Some other students wonder what's happening. They start to one by one come out into the hallway, and crowd around wondering what is happening. Sunna is one of them, but she's far in the back, before she can see anything. June grabs onto her hand, and tells her they should go take a walk in the field. She is caught off guard and a bit flustered. June says that Demon King or not, he doesn't care, he just wants to run away with Sunna. The screams can still be heard from outside. One of the students asks another if he heard that, but bro was locked into a podcast and says he had his earbuds in. The other student says there was a scream. Then we see June and Sunna running out of the school. He is holding onto her hand, determined to live. Sunna hears even more screams from behind. She tells June, but he tells her not to bother turning back. June is out of breath and says that it's the same thing from the store, or maybe even worse since they are in a hallway. The screams are drowned out by the woman's laughter, and she starts going to town on them. Head after head just sent flying, other students just watch in pure fear. June and Sana can even see it from outside. They keep running, and he wonders if they are doing this right. Asking if they can escape by running, but then what? He'll spend 3 years in another school, only to die by the Demon King to repeat this cycle. He says even if it isn't, he can think of something later. A cold chill is sent down his spine, as we hear the woman saying to not leave. June realizes she's talking to them. He starts to panic, saying they've been caught. But says it's okay, the gate is so close, and they definitely have enough time to climb the wall and hide. But he severely underestimated how fast she was, as she would smoke even Usain Bolt. Sana calls his name out but sounds distant, so he turns, thinking it's odd as she should be right behind him. But then he sees that he has just been holding onto her arm, as her body is on the floor with a laughing woman standing atop her. He falls to the floor, with his thoughts being drowned out by his heartbeat. He starts to beg for help. But it's too late, as she is already too close and cuts his head off. With his few seconds of consciousness left, all he can hear are her screams while being told he will be restarting again. He loads back into this morning, and is riddled with fear. He asks how the hell he can fight something like this. She's strong enough to cut people's limbs off with just a box cutter. She is faster than the world's fastest man too. He sighs, and says to calm down, there has to be a way out of this. He says the laughing woman is from the manual ghost story, just like how yesterday's announcement was resolved by staying in the classroom. The condition must be to pretend not to see her. But how can he do that when it's so terrifying? Even if he does it, those around him won't. Which will lead to there being another massacre. He says that the only solution is for him to be alone with her and to succeed. He talks about how it's driving him crazy, and he goes back to drawing lots again. He picks 26 just like usual. He says he's died a couple of times, but how can he get the same number 3 times in a row? But decides it's irrelevant. He says it won't be hard to be alone with her. She climbs over the wall during break, so he just needs to climb over first. The problem is pretending he cannot see her. He could close his eyes and block his ears. But that means he'd already have reacted. So he needs to endure it with his eyes open and without blocking his ears. He says there's no way to do that, bro forgot about settings. He starts to think about it, and wonders if he has to be the one to even do it. He says this ghost story is different from the entrance ceremony one. Since it's a real entity and not a mystery, it may be possible for others to stop her. Earlier he got caught since he ran across an open field. But he can survive if he runs or hides on his own. However, even if he reports it quickly, it won't save those in the store. So he decides that he could turn a blind eye to it just this once, and starts to think about the aftermath. Sana calls out to him, and blushes while trying to ask him if he would want to go to the store with her later, as she is a little hungry. He recalls her lifeless body from last time, and hides back the frustration from telling her no. He doesn't reply yet, and says if he knew about this he wouldn't have made friends. Even though he was meant to make them, so there's a way to clear it without anyone dying. But he's too phased to think about it. He determines himself to figure it out solo, and she calls out to him saying it's okay if he doesn't want to go. He sighs, and immediately folds, saying that he'll go with her. He says surely it'd be okay to go, right, and he can just take her to the store. Right outside of the cafeteria, June approaches the wall. Sana seems a bit nervous, and says the cafeteria is over to the side. He says yeah, but asks her to wait here for a second. He tells her he's gonna climb the fence for a bit, so he wants her to watch his back. She nervously looks to her left, and then to her right, and seems frightened for some reason. He asks her what's wrong, and realizes that he was distracted by the laughing woman, so it would look like he's trying to get her to cover while he smokes. He tells her it isn't like that, and that he has something important to take care of. He makes it over the wall, and says she should soon be climbing over the wall and head to the store. Unless she can teleport or something, she should be heading nearby. He says she's so tall it should be easy to spot. Then he does so, and sees her in the woods. She stops walking, then turns over staring at him. He says it's fine as he hasn't reacted yet. He wonders what to do, saying he hasn't figured out a way to deal with her yet. Unless he can blind himself, how can he ignore her? Then it clicks with him, the fact that he has the damn settings. He quickly puts his brightness to max, and can't see a damn thing. He says this is good. But it's not like he's looking away, he's just spacing away in front of her. He starts to hear her voice, and realizes that he needs to mute the audio. So he quickly swipes it down. He sighs, and says it's almost like he is meditating. And since he knows Suna has his back, his heart is very calm. But he is a bit uneasy since nothing is happening. He wonders if she went straight to the cafeteria, and goes to adjust his brightness a bit. But as he slides it down, she is right in his face. So he quickly maxes it out again. He hopes he didn't make a reaction. He wonders if she's doing this intentionally to force a reaction. He sighs, saying the status window is a power that she can't even change. He says that she is probably prowling around waiting to see a reaction, so he just needs to stay still. He says everything will be fine. He starts to think about all the shit she's put him through and says it pisses him off. Then smacks her in the face. The laughing woman is surprised. And he starts giving her the domestic violence no jutsu. Saying equal rights, equal lefts. He keeps hitting her, and says it's working. As she hasn't attacked back, it means that he hasn't violated the manual. He tells her to look at his face. She can surely tell he isn't looking at her. He's just a normal student who is practicing his shadow boxing. He hits her saying this one is for Suna, then gives her a left saying it's for Jian. Then he goes for a kick, saying this is for his grandpa. The laughing woman falls to the floor, but he doesn't know that and sits there out of breath, saying she was nothing but a chump. While being gassed out, he wonders how long he's been hitting her for. Asking if the break is over yet, but says that him being in one piece means he is definitely following the manual. He wonders how long he has to do it for, saying he should have gotten a message like before. Then he says maybe she actually ignored him and went to the cafeteria. And maybe Suna climbed over the wall to check on him. Then he starts to wonder if he's just been beating the hell out of Suna. He cuts it down a bit to check, but just sees the woman in his face. So slides it back, saying never mind, and that he almost pissed his pants. He clenches his fist, and hits her again, saying that he can freely swing his arms without having to worry. He keeps just hitting her over and over, and after a clean hit to her face he starts to wonder what this excitement he is feeling means. In this silent space all that exists are him and his fists. He wonders if sweating has ever felt this good before. And that he wants to do even more damage. He starts to channel his inner Ippo, and he hits her across the head. The laughing woman slowly starts fade out of existence. And goes poof from where he is standing. He is gassed out and asks if he got her or not. A message appears saying that he's come across and survived the B-rank ghost story, Laughing Woman, and has earned 15 GS points. And due to his wits of dealing with her, he earns another 70 GS points. He starts to feel excited, and screams very loudly. He hops back over the wall. He says that victory is more empty than he thought it would be. Suna calls out to him, and asks what he was swearing at, and that she heard fighting noises. He thinks she's talking about the laughing woman swearing. He starts to feel accomplished saying it was really one-sided. He tells her that there was someone crazy there, but he chased her away so it should be fine now. She says he should have called a teacher as it was dangerous. And asks if he's hurt or anything. He tells her he's fine. He says other than that, how many minutes left until their break ends? It cuts back to their classroom. Jian asks why they took so long to get back, saying class started almost 30 minutes ago. He says they are lucky that it's self-study time or else they would have thought that they'd be skipping classes on the second day of school. Jun says he had stuff to deal with, and then asks why it's self-study. It's meant to be Korean listed on the schedule. Jian says that they are busy with meetings and stuff since it's early. The teacher told them to think of a club to join. Jun asks about the clubs and Jian says clubs are pretty active in their school, so joining one is a must. Jun looks down at the schedule, saying that there aren't classes Friday afternoon. It's just club activities, and the school is hella serious about clubs. He starts to think about what clubs are available. His status window pops up, and says that he decided to make his own club. He says he hasn't even looked at them, but it decided for him that none of them appeal to him. He starts to think about it, but just sighs instead. He pulls out his pen and decides to go along with it and to do as he's been told. He puts an application in for the Ghost Story Club, finishing the tutorial. It cuts to the cafeteria, and we see their thing saying school lunch etiquette. He looks at the status window to show that club management is still locked, and his casualty rate is 4%. While munching, he says the casualty rate is higher, and wonders if it's an experience system. He skips the things he doesn't know, and opens his status windows. We see that he has 3 options for special abilities. He says he can use the ghost story points for a special ability. He says it wouldn't make sense to be fighting monsters without them. He clicks on the menu to reveal he needs 100 GS points to unlock the ability. He says those points he saved from dying over and over, he has to spend it all to get a single point. He says the economy in this game blows. He uses them all, and a window pops up and turns out it's a gacha system and begins to roll for his skill. As it starts to spin, he starts to feel sick that they are all random. He wonders what fast walking is, saying it's not even running. He starts to pray he gets something not straight dookie. It starts to slow down, and he says please anything but fast walking. It starts going from skill to skill very slowly, and lands on one called Goddess of Luck. It's an S-rank skill, that triggers automatically. It will give him a burst of luck in a dire situation. But it's a consumable which bothers him. He says things are looking good from the start. They head to McDoria, it's their version of McDonald's I guess. Jian is telling them all that burgers aren't bad for their health. He says it's perfect food, and well he yaps a lot. June ignores him and keeps eating. He keeps yapping, but quickly distorts as his voice is stuck on loop. Then he continues, asking June if he understood it all. June says yeah sure, and looks over at Sana putting on makeup, and says she's really pretty. June keeps it up, and then his head starts to swell up, and he explodes like a zit, causing his glasses to fall through the air, and land on June's face. It was due to his Goddess of Luck. He says he didn't expect them to work like this. He looks over at Sana saying they should get going. But he is surprised to see her stab herself in the eye. She pulls it out and repeats it over and over, leaving nothing but blood on their food. He calls out to her, and she slowly turns to him with half of her face destroyed. She starts to laugh like a banshee, and he jolts awake. He sits up in bed, and sighs out of relief it was just a dream. But he says it's understandable, as he's been through so much. He sighs again and looks drained emotionally. He says he hopes nothing special happens today. It cuts to the school, and inside of the bathroom we see a toilet. Some hands begin to crawl out of it, as we see a girl's face peer out of it. It cuts to the faculty room as Damien is asking June if he knows what he's called him here. June looks nervous saying that he has no clue. Damien reaches towards some files and pulls out a piece of paper, showing it to June, and we see that it is his club form. Damien says, there is no ghost story club in the school. And since he wrote down a club that doesn't exist, that means he must be wanting to make one. June says yes and then nervously asks if freshmen aren't allowed to form clubs. Damien says there's no rules against it. It's just that normally people don't in their first year. Damien goes onto his computer saying that he'll print him an application form. And all he has to do is fill it out and bring it to him before he goes home today. He tells him that he needs 4 people, at minimum, to create a club and to find 3 more members. The printer starts to go off and Damien tells June to take the one that's being printed. Also, to leave the teacher in charge field blank as they will handle it. June bows and thanks him and then wonders who to recruit first. Because all he can think of is Sana and Jian. As he is going over, Damien calls out to him asking if he knows about this specific ghost story. On the freshman restroom on the east side in the boys' room, there is a ghost. June is surprised and wonders why the ghost stories are being mentioned every single day. Damien says that the story goes like this. When you are in the 4th cubicle, you suddenly will hear a strange voice. It whispers terrifying things into your ears. Damien asks if he wants to know what it says. June audibly gulps asking what it is. Damien has the hentai protagonist's glasses glare, asking if he wants the red tissue or the blue tissue. June realizes that it's just Morpheus and says that the story is old. As he is walking down the hallway, he starts to think of the 3 people for the club, saying that he only has 2 friends. He thinks about asking Smo or Herman but realizes he is not close with them, since he only talked to them once after regressing. He sees Jinhee walking down the hallway and behind her is Sana. He sighs saying it looks like they ran through the courtyard together since they were late. And how Sana barely made it yesterday as well. Then he thinks about it saying that Jinhee was one of the people verified on his status window. She's one of the 3 friends in the quest. He decides to ask her if she's willing to join but she gives him the cold shoulder. She slides the classroom door open, and heads inside leaving June awkwardly waving. Sana waves back at him and he's just glad that she replied saying that he can pretend he was trying to talk to her in the first place. Then he calls out to her saying that he is trying to start a club and was wondering if she would join. It cuts to the bathroom and he's dropping straight heat. We learn that Sana agreed to join and he also hopes that Jian joins without an issue. For the remaining slot he should probably ask Smo as he and Jian seemed close. We hear a voice in the 4th stall asking who's there and June turns to look at it. The voice asks if he wants to die saying to stop pulling pranks. June asks what he means saying he hasn't done anything. He says to stop bringing up the red tissue or blue tissue. June starts to recall the story that Damien told him, saying that it is the 4th cubicle and maybe Damien was telling the truth. He starts to recount the ghost story, saying that the Morpheus question of red pill or blue pill is a classic ghost story. A ghost in the bathroom asks the person if they want red or blue tissue. No matter which one the person chooses, they die. June starts to second guess himself, saying that it must be a coincidence, but realizes that that's not the case. He wonders if he should try to run away or just go against it. The voice inside calls out to him, asking if he's still there. We see that it is a first-year student named Yunsuk. He wonders if June is messing with him and puts his phone into his pants, saying that once he leaves, he's dead meat. But he looks over at the toilet paper holder and realizes that it's empty. He asks June if he can hand him some toilet paper in the next stall. June sighs, saying that he doesn't want to die. Yunsuk apologizes for cursing, saying he'll get him some food if he helps. June says that it's his choice. Then he starts to hear the voice asking about the tissues. Yunsuk kicks the door, yelling, saying to stop playing with him, then asks June which class he is in. As he keeps yelling, June wonders what to do, saying that he could just run away. But that will lead to the pooper being killed. Yunsuk says that he'll remember his voice, and he'll find him when he gets out. June kicks the door, asking why he keeps swearing. Yunsuk starts to get annoyed, and zips up his pants, saying that's it, and to wait for him to come out. The only thought in June's mind is that little bro didn't wipe, and he starts to run away, saying that is nasty as hell. As he goes to run out, his homeroom teacher appears. He's caught off guard and sees her sighing. He tries to tell her this is the boys' room, but she says that she heard them yelling outside asking why they were fighting so early into the semester. He wonders how he's going to explain this and decides to make an excuse. He tells her that Yunsuk didn't have any tissues, so he was poking fun at him. She sighs, asking if he is a child or something, saying that he should have just borrowed the tissues earlier, asking why he didn't answer when he was told to pick a color. June awkwardly laughs, saying he knows, then realizes what she just said. As she starts to crouch down onto the floor and crawl on all fours, straight past June onto the ceiling. Yunsuk looks up to see her and she starts to twitch and convulse while repeating how many times. Then her head turns full exorcist as she asks how many times she needs to mention the tissues. She asks Yunsuk why he's not answering. Yunsuk runs out of the stall without wiping and falls onto the floor, probably smearing it. He wonders what that is, yelling, asking what's going on. He makes eye contact with the teacher, then she jumps off the top rope, landing right in front of him. In the deepest voice imaginable, she asks him to choose between the red or blue tissues. Yunsuk starts pleading with June for help, but June is at a loss for words. He's sure she was the teacher at the entrance ceremony, wondering if she's been a ghost the entire time, but says she's most likely just possessed instead. He starts to think about it. How if you pick the red tissue you bleed to death? Whereas, if you pick blue you're strangled to death. He takes a shot in the dark, quickly yelling out white tissues. Yunsuk begins to shake and cry as June tells his teacher to give him the white tissues, since if he's going to die either way, he might as well pick a different option. He knows it's a childish idea, but there's no other way. He wonders how she will react. She raises up off of the floor and starts walking towards him, saying that boys his age can't help it after all. She puts her finger on her lip, asking if he really wants the white tissues, while giving him a seductive look, making June's heart skip a beat. June wonders what he's supposed to say, since the red tissues turn him red, the blue tissues turn him blue. He wonders if the white will turn him white, wondering what that would even mean. Yunsuk takes this chance to run away. June gets annoyed, saying he left as soon as he drew aggro and grits his teeth, calling him ungrateful. The teacher then says so and gets close to him, asking what they are going to do, asking if he wants to experience the white tissues. His heart starts to race and he wonders what will happen if he says yes. He stutters and then quickly says that he's sorry, he hasn't pooped yet today, so he'll just accept her thoughts and then walks away. I have second-hand embarrassment. He wonders if it worked and he turns, saying that it was the fourth cubicle in the story anyways, so he shouldn't be a part of it. As he walks, he prays she doesn't come after him and he exits the bathroom door. He lets out a long sigh, then looks at the status window that pops up, saying that he has survived the C-rank ghost story. He has earned 10 GS points. He squats down out of relief and says at least this time he finished it without dying. And he wonders what the white tissues were. Back in the classroom we hear Smo saying that life is truly wonderful, and he's glad that he has a desk mate who initiates conversations, as it usually only happens in anime, and in some weeb Japanese. He apologizes about the club invitation, saying that he's planning to join the anime club, where he belongs. June stares at him and wishes that he was in any other manhwa right now. We see him telling Jian about it and that it's called the Ghost Story Club. He asks Jian if he is interested. Jian thinks about it, saying that he was just planning to join one of the academic clubs. Jun says that's no surprise, as he didn't seem to care about anything other than the college entrance exam. But decides to give it another shot. He tells Jian that joining academic clubs is a losing strategy for freshmen, as they don't put you in extracurricular activities that would be helpful for resumes. Jian asked what he means. Jun explains that because of the seniors, the school focuses on activities in the second and third years. Even if you win an award in a club competition, the seniors get their names listed first. Jian asks what he is talking about, and why he's even giving him advice. Jun wonders if he hurt his pride or something, saying he's rude. But his understanding of Jian increases by 5. He decides to bluff with the experience of a 3-year regressor, saying that he believes he's entitled to give advice, asking Jian if he's better at studying. Jian says he is better than him at least. Jun gets slightly annoyed by how he talks, but does not disagree with him. He can't afford to lose a battle of words. He asks what his rank was in middle school. Jian tells him that he was in the top 10 at the very least. Jun tells him that he was always in the top 3. Jian says there's no way, asking why he decided to enter this school, not a special one. Jun crouches down, saying to be honest, asking if he has the same goal as him, rather than hitting the bottom ranks at a special high school. It's better to be at the top of this school and go to the national university. Jian says that he was planning to go to another college. Jun says it does not matter and to listen carefully. This is not a losing suggestion for him. As he said, it's pointless to join an academic club in the first year. Jian said his mother never mentioned this. Jun says it's weird to be a mama's boy at 17. He tells him to think about it, saying that he's going to organize the club with first-year students only, which means they'll be the first ever members. So he asks him what will happen if they get to a competition and win. There won't be any hazing or anything else. Jian apologizes to him, saying that the ghost story theme is odd, but it doesn't sound like a bad idea. Jun thinks about how he's already got him, as he can't decline this offer. That is because his understanding of Jian has increased by another 20. Jian says that it would be better for him to start a club instead. Jun says that'll be difficult, as originally the first years weren't allowed to make clubs. Then lets him in on a secret, but he has connections on the teacher's side. He's completely bullshitting Jian, eats it up and then daps Jun up, saying he'll give it a shot. Now Jun only needs one more person to form the Ghost Story Club. Jun says that anybody who submitted a self-introduction letter to college would naturally know that documents are usually half fiction. We see Sana nervously asking if he is done yet. Jun says almost, and we see him writing something out, saying that it will be good to sugarcoat it. Sana asks if they'll be able to do club activities by themselves. He says that only if they get one more person, asking her if it sounds fun. She excitedly says yes. He says that she's probably just glad to have people to be comfortable with. His understanding of her increases by 5. He says not to worry, as he'll make sure to get one more person before the end of today, and they'll have fun. The clock ticks by, as it gets closer and closer to dismissal time. Jun says that he is screwed. They'll leave soon and they still need one more member. He wonders what to do, asking if he should just write down a random name. He decides that doesn't feel right and he'll need to talk to the teacher about it. Damim tells everybody good work, and how this morning a student slipped in the bathroom and got hurt, telling them all to be careful not to slip. As everybody goes to leave, Jun calls out to Damim, handing him the club application form. Damim snatches it up before Jun can finish his thought. Damim tells him that he'll see him tomorrow. Jun tries to get him to wait, but Damim quickly walks off. Jun says that he's the type who won't stay longer than he has to, and his understanding of Damim increases by 5. As he starts heading back home, he says he ended up submitting it one person short, and that the status window says it's a quest. So he wonders what will happen if he fails. But he decides to stop worrying about it, saying he is sure it will work out, as he keeps walking home. This was the first day. He survived without dying. Of course, it was thanks to him knowing of the story beforehand. He wonders if he's supposed to study ghost stories for the future, and thinks about all of the trouble so far, saying this shit is exhausting. He looks up towards the apartments. He sees a figure on the balcony, which is his mother. He waves to her, saying that she's home early, wondering if something happened. She doesn't respond to his waves, and then starts to glare at him. He wonders why she's just staring, asking if maybe something bad happened. He quickly runs up to the door and opens it. He tells her that he is home, but she's nowhere to be found. He walks around asking where she is, and goes room to room, saying that he is pretty sure he saw her. He opens the balcony to see Slippers, asking where she went in that short moment. saying that he is sure she was here. Then a chill runs on his spine as he turns to his left to see his mother sitting inside of the washing machine. Just glaring at him, he gets scared and stumbles backwards, landing on the floor. He looks up completely panicked, wondering what's going on and if maybe he is hallucinating. His heart starts to beat rapidly and his eyes begin to blur, as his mother's head peers around the corner asking him how school was. He doesn't answer, so she asks him again how it was. June says that he needs to run and starts scrambling towards the door, wondering if his mother is possessed, asking why he has to suffer this at home too. He gets to the door and his mother yells, saying that he's just like his father, asking where he thinks he's going. He grabs onto the door and then opens it, hauling absolute cheeks downstairs. He makes it to the side of the street and is gassed out, asking what the hell is going on? He says since it's at his house, he can't run away this time. But he really does not want to go back. He lets out a sigh, saying he has no choice. He'll just wait for his father to get home from work. He has his phone with him, but he left his wallet. Yet he was still somehow able to put his slippers on in the middle of that. He starts to walk around wondering what to do to pass the time. Sometime later in the afternoon, we see him swinging, saying that he doesn't have the money to do anything. Then something comes to his mind and he stops talking as he says that he is thinking about Sana. It's not like he has a specific reason and he decides to just message her while he's thinking about her. He sends her a text, then realizes after sending it that was the first time he's ever messaged a girl. He hopes he didn't make any mistakes, saying maybe he should have been more formal, saying maybe she'll cut him off for being rude. She replies, saying hi, and even adds a cute smiley face. He's surprised that she replied but instantly feels giddy, saying that she's so cute. He starts asking her what she is doing and she says that she was just spacing out. He thinks about it and says there's no way she was just spacing out, saying that it might be a girl language. There is a whole lot of text, I ain't reading all that, you can if you want. After he says that he left his wallet behind, she doesn't reply for a while, which makes him anxious. He wonders if she doesn't like him whining. He decides that he should try changing the subject but says that would make him seem clingy. She then replies, asking him if he would like to come to her place. Without hesitation he says yes. He heads over to her apartment, and we see her open the door. She tells him that it's a bit messy but welcomes him in. He starts to calm himself down as his heart is going crazy. He says he doesn't want to think about stuff like she has a girly room, or that it smells nice. He enters the apartment seeing that it is hella worn down, but says he expected this much already. He takes his shoes off, asking if her grandma's not here. She is then surprised, asking how he knew that she lived with her grandma. He says because she told him that her grandma woke her up late. But then he realizes that that was in a different life as he was killed. Since her brain is smooth, he gaslights her into believing it. He quickly changes the conversation, asking her if she plays games. She says that she doesn't have a computer. Then he spots the TV, asking if she wants to watch it, saying that they might be able to find a good movie. She says that it can only show public TV networks. He realizes that anything he says is going to be a critical hit because she is poor. They begin going through her yearbook, and June says that Sana looks the exact same as she did in middle school, asking her how she spent her time during it. She awkwardly tries to come up with a reply, but it ends up with just silence instead. June gulps, saying this is awkward, and that he needs to change the topic. He looks up to see one of her books about humor. She says it's a really old book, but that she finds it funny. It's just a bunch of puns, and he starts asking her about them. He starts to read them aloud and she answers them. He tells her that's amazing, asking if she memorized them all. Embarrassed, she says yes, as it was nothing special. He says he understands though, since there's not much to do at Sana's house and since she has no friends. She kept reading the humor book over and over to the point that it became worn out. He starts to feel guilty, saying that this isn't good, and no matter what they do, it feels more tense and there are too many landmines here. She misunderstands what he's feeling, asking if her house is boring. He's surprised and she apologizes, saying that she called him because she wanted to fix her personality now that she's in high school. But sadly she's poor, so there's nothing fun to do here. He looks at her and asks her what she usually does after school, as he is genuinely curious about her hobbies. She starts to tell him what she does and says yesterday she came home to get changed, then walked around the neighborhood for a bit and then went to sleep right after eating dinner. She says that she went to bed late so she couldn't wake up early, and he realizes that's why she was late. She apologizes, saying that she can't remember the day before yesterday. He calls out to her, saying even if the ghost story club doesn't work out, he wants to join the same club as her. She is surprised but smiles warmly at him, saying yeah, and his understanding of her increases by 10. He heads back home, saying that the time has come. This time he's got backup. His dad asks what's wrong with his face. He says that it's unbelievable, but there's something strange in the house, and something is pretending to be his mother. The father stiffens up, asking when he first saw it. June is surprised, and his father says that he first saw it 3 days ago. June says if it was 3 days ago, that's the day before the entrance ceremony. His father tells him how he came out of his room late at night and saw her doing a handstand on the table. When he called out to her as her neck twisted and turned at him. She says that all of the other husbands drive to pick their wives up, asking why he can't do the same. At work he got a call on his phone and he answers it. She's asking him if his mother is the only mother, saying she wants to go see her mother's face too. He says that for the past few days he's been waiting for his mother in front of the house even if he gets off of work early. June says that now that he thinks about it, his mother did ask if he saw a ghost in the house or something. June asks his father what they should do and he sighs, saying that they can't put his mother in danger. So they need to handle it themselves. They head upstairs and enter the house, but they leave the door stopped down, grabbing an umbrella for defense, and they slowly walk forward. They see a light coming from the kitchen and they both slowly start to walk towards it. We see his mother grab a knife and they both turn the corner in fear. To see her floating above the cutting board with the knife in hand. Their hearts start to beat like crazy. As the mother's head starts to twitch and then turns into a corkscrew, as she glares at them asking where they have been. And why they are coming home so late. June's father drops his briefcase, screaming to disappear if you're a ghost and leave if you are a human. The mother does not reply. And then after a minute, she asks if it's fair that when someone else makes a mess, she has to clean it up. June and his father both get cold sweats and she asks why they keep making messes. Screaming at them. She leaps at them, saying just let her relax please. Father readies his umbrella and opens it. Blocking the knife, he realizes that it's going to come into him, so he raises his hand, flipping the umbrella. Knocking the mother over, making her hit her head. She lays there for a second and then slowly starts to stand back up. Telling him that she can't keep living like this, and that they should hang themselves and die. Father tells June to stay behind him, saying it doesn't feel right. The mother does not say anything, but she looks up, giving him a haunting gaze. She says that she heard the class president can focus for 3 hours straight. And she never should have had a dumbass like June. She begins to David Blaine into the air, saying that they should all just die together. She starts to cry blood and then flies toward, repeating that they should all just hang around. Father tells June to run. His mother grabs onto him and begins to choke him out. June watches this and, trembling in fear, still raises his umbrella, saying to let go of his father. And then smacks her in the head. She takes the attack and then glances over at him, making him terrified. Father tells him to stay back as he will handle this. Then we hear their neighbors calling out to them. June turns over to see the neighbors entering their house, asking what is going on. June says that it is the auntie and uncle from next door. The uncle starts to walk towards June's mother, asking what is the meaning of this. Saying that they should settle it through conversation, asking her why she is doing this all of a sudden. Then he notices she is flying and his heart drops. She glares at him, saying all he does is drink and gamble, so she doesn't want to live here anymore. So she plans to hang everybody, and to stay out of her way. Uncle says that does not sound like June's father, and then comments on her eyes bleeding. He tells June that there is something wrong with his mother and to go to his house and call the cops. June panics, not knowing what to do, but father yells, saying to go do it. June grits his teeth and then starts running, telling his dad to hang in there. He and the auntie make it inside and he is gassed. The auntie asks him what is going on, saying that his parents were getting along perfectly normal just the other day. He tells her to wait and he will explain it later. Since he needs to call the police first. He starts to call them and then their doorbell camera goes off. Terrified, they both glare over. We hear June's father saying that he needs him to open the door. We see his eyes bulging and his tongue hanging out of his mouth. Both June and Annie are at a loss for words. June asks who he is and what happened to his father. His father asks if he's tired of eating instant noodles. To the point of getting heartburn. He got tired of it, so he hung himself along with his mother. And that June should join them and die. June asks what he's talking about. Saying that they don't even eat instant noodles. His father tells him to open the door. June gets pissed and barks, asking what they've done to his parents. His phone begins to ring and he picks it up to see that it's his mother. He answers it and she asks if something happened to the house. As she just got home from work, there is a huge crowd at the front gate. As well as the police. June realizes that people must have reported the commotion and tells her they're fine and not to enter, and if the police pass by. June then loses his train of thought as he watches on the monitor. As his father's lifeless body is moved out of the camera frame, we see his mother staring at the camera. As well as tons of feet hanging from the ceiling. June and Auntie are even more terrified than before as they hear people being choked outside of the apartment. June wonders what in the world is going on, asking if his dad is okay, saying that he needs to do something. He looks around for any form of a weapon and sees a bag with golf clubs. He quickly runs over and grabs one out. Auntie asks him where he's going and he says to wait here and he'll see what he can do. He opens the door to see his dad laying on the floor. He starts shaking him, saying to get himself together, but his dad is unresponsive. Then he wonders where his mother went. We see her pop down from the ceiling above him. He hears her breathing and turns as she is flying in, asking how he's going to marry anybody with his fat piggy body. He smacks her in the face with a club, which stops her for a second. Her head reels from the hit, but her gaze does not shift. She grabs June by the throat, causing him to drop the golf club. He struggles, screaming to get off of him, and tries to pry her hands away from his throat. But she begins to squeeze tighter, saying that he should just die already, and she's tired of him making her suffer. Due to the lack of oxygen, and his eyes roll into the back of his head and he is strangled to death. The windows appear, saying that he is dead and he will restart at the previous checkpoint. And it loads him in. We see Sana telling him that she had fun and to take care, but he is speechless. She calls out to him, asking what's wrong, and in a sad tone replies to her. Then instantly acts cheerful, saying that he'll see her tomorrow. She smiles, saying okay, and then he heads back home. We see him calling somebody and we hear Jian answer the phone. June says he has something to ask if he is free. Jian says that he is in his study break, and June tells him about a horror story regarding an entity pretending to be his mother, asking if he has heard of such a thing. Jian wonders why he is so obsessed with ghost stories, and June tells him that he is just curious, asking if it rings a bell. Jian says that if it's that kind of ghost story, he can think of one. And while there are tons of stories about ghosts pretending to be family members, there is a famous one which is called the Mother Dilemma. June asks what it is and if there is a way out. Jian thinks about it and says there is something. If you've watched till the end, comment burger to let me know. Subscribe for more videos like this, leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.